Was that? Yes.
Yeah. So I need to turn my phone off.
I call this meeting of the Central Florida Facilitators Toastmasters Club 9958 to order. And as always, thank you all for being here tonight. If you have phones or other electronic devices that make noise, please put them on silent mode or turn them off for the duration of the meeting. And since I see one guest here, the restrooms are out this hallway to the left. Take the first hallway to the left and it's down on the right-hand side if you need to use the restroom. And if anybody must enter or exit the room once the meeting starts, we ask that you use the doors back there on the side for less interruption. At Toastmasters, we provide a supportive and positive learning experience in which members are empowered to develop communication and leadership skills, resulting in greater self-confidence and personal growth. Through this mission, each Toastmaster gains a clear understanding of the club's purpose, and the organization as a whole benefits from a shared set of values and goals. Please help me welcome our Thought and Pledge leader for this evening, Mark Lockery. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Tonight's quote comes from Dale Carnegie, an American writer and lecturer and the developer of famous courses in self-improvement. And he says, there are always 3 speeches for every one that you actually gave. The one that you practiced, the one that you gave, and the one that you wish you gave. Now please stand and join me with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please help me welcome our president this evening, Mark Lockery.
Yay!
Hat trick tonight.
About darn time, you got to work.
All right. I'll remember that. I'll remember that. We are called the Facilitators for 3 reasons. We are sponsored by the Central Florida Chapter of the American Society of Training and Development, the premier organization for professional facilitators open to all. A good facilitator needs to be a strong communicator and an effective leader. And Toastmasters is all about communication and leadership. To facilitate means to make things easy and possible, and we want to make things easy and possible for you here tonight. I see that we have one guest in the room tonight, and your name is Ginny, I believe?
Ginny.
If you could stand up and just give us a quick introduction of yourself, we'd love to hear from you. Right there's fine.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. My name is Ginny Morris Sarden. I'm a former member of the Communicators Club in Central Florida. I haven't been involved in Toastmasters for 7 long years, and I'm very interested in getting back and developing my communication and leadership skills. It's a pleasure to be here this evening.
Thank you, Ginny. Some quick pre-program business. We are just 7 days away from our club contest, which is next Wednesday. And I believe we have all of our functionary positions filled at this point. So the only thing we have left to do now is the delegates for the different parts of the meeting, the decorations, the food, and the chair people for that. I will be contest master. Susan is our contest chair.
Chief Judge? Good.
Chief Judge is Sarah.
Oh, awesome.
Everybody, I believe, who's not participating in the competition itself is helping out in a functionary position, which is really good. Also, we've been asked by some of the other clubs to help with their contests, so if any of you have availability for either the articulators, or the Winter Park, or any of those other clubs, all of the clubs' contests are like right after each other for a week, so it's kind of like Greek week. So if you have any availability, help them out. I'm going to be at the Articulators Club Thursday morning helping Epi out with their contest.
Mark,
Yes.
can I make one reminder? Our dues are coming up in March, and it is not too early to start collecting. It's treasurer. I like to bank that money ASAP. So could I remind everyone to please bring your checks or payment methods for our next meeting or as soon as you can. It would be appreciated by your treasurer.
How much?
How much? It's 36 and 9, so what?
45.
And
Dues
It just went up,
I
okay?
got it. Enjoy the low-cost fees while you can, because in October they're raising the membership fees. I forwarded an email to our Google
So it's
group.
45.
The international friend I sent to everybody just to.
Okay.
So 36 for a TMI and 9 for us, but put it all on one check. And when it gets in the bank account, I will pay.
It's 12 for the club, correct? Is it?
No,
It's
not.
You're welcome to give us 12.
Yeah.
Sure.
We'll put it to good use. Okay, I'm excited about tonight's meeting. Our Toastmaster tonight wears many hats. Hypnotist, IT engineer, you name it, and he does it. Videographer, coming up contest or division contest host, I believe, right? Next division contest is, aren't you hosting?
District.
District.
Conference and not the next.
District conference. The one hopefully I'll be seventh place. Tonight's theme is myth, and I cannot wait to hear what it's all about. So please, let's get this Toastmaster up here. Please help me welcome Steve Morgan.
Just so you know, it's all in your head. How would you define what a myth is? Because I'm sure you've experienced and encountered many of them throughout your life. But how would you describe what one is? Has anyone bothered to think about that before?
The IRS is on your side.
That's an example of one. Now, how would you define one? Tony?
Something a lot of people believe and is maybe part of the culture, but isn't actually true.
Very much so. A good way to put that. A myth is, one way of defining it is a sacred or culturally central narrative. Another description that was found when I went looking for it is that a myth in a culture serves to justify human traditions and address fundamental questions about the world, such as the nature of disorder or the ultimate fate of the universe. Now, we're familiar with many myths and we've encountered them throughout history. Most of the time we're most familiar with, say, the Greek mythology. We're familiar with lots of the Greek gods, the heroes, and the stories that have been told. Some of those that have been handed down from Homer, the Iliad and the Odyssey being huge epic poems. Remember, he was blind, so he had to memorize all this just from hearing it, then reciting it. He couldn't write it or read it. These epic stories were passed down for generation upon generation. What they became over that time, we're not sure, but those stories became central to the Greek culture and the way that the Greeks thought about themselves. The story of Zeus overthrowing his parents, cutting his siblings out of his father's stomach where he swallowed them. Why did they come up with these ideas? I don't know. But the stories kept getting told over and over. And as a result, the Greeks became defined in many ways by these stories. And they perpetuate on. For these same stories that the Greeks told became the same stories that the Romans adopted. They just simply changed the names. Zeus became Jupiter. Hermes became Mercury. Then they assigned them to the planets that we saw up in the sky. Because that was their way of describing what they saw without any better explanation available. Therefore becoming part of their culture and their society. We have our own myths here. I'm sure we'll hear a few more. We've already heard one. Within Jay's field, we know what one may be. One of the myths is that We pay lots of close attention to that technical table. But we do like to hear what they have to tell us, to learn a bit, especially hear their introductions, since our guests would like to learn a little bit more. We'll begin first with our grammarian. Tony, are you ready for us?
I'm ready.
Let's go with it.
My job to select the word of the day. I've chosen the word help! Exclamation point. Kind of like Jim! Exclamation point. Help is a call for or plea for immediate assistance, usually in a crisis type situations. An example of the word in a sentence is, help! I walked into the room and I can't remember why. Does anybody know why I'm here? I'll keep track of those who use the word of the day. Those who have a chance to speak and do not use the word will be fined 25 cents. Guests and members who have not yet given their icebreaker, none apply. I'll listen for colorful imagery and exceptional use of vocabulary and grammar. At the end of the meeting, I'll give a report and make suggestions for proper grammar use if that's appropriate. Thank you.
Our odd counter, Gail, is explaining to us.
Mr. Toastmaster, in order to improve the quality of our speech, the odd counter's job is to make us aware of disruptive audible crutches and myths that we think should be incorporated into our speech, such as the ahs and the ums and the you-knows and the double clutches. And in addition, a myth some of you think is appropriate are tongue clicks. I'm going to listen for tongue clicks, which is a...
Explain. I'll probably do them now that I've heard what they are.
And the double clutches, which is a repetition of a word while the speaker is searching for his next thought. However, this is no myth. I, as your out counter, will be helping you note sentences strung together with bridge words such as and, so, like, and we'll give a report of such at the end of the meeting. Mr. Toastmaster.
Our timer, Sarah, please explain.
So tonight I will be timing speakers to qualify for voting as Best Speaker, Best Table Topics, Speaker, and Best Evaluator. I will record the times after each section to announce those who qualify for the voting and the awards. I will give the visual clues of a green light at the minimum range, yellow at the mid-range, and then the red light at the max. And to qualify for voting, the speaker must speak no less than 30 seconds under the minimum and no more than 30 seconds over the maximum range of the speech. I have Susan 9, there's my tongue click. You can write that down, Gail. 9 to 11, stop it. Yep. John 5 to 7. Thanks, that's all I have.
And our supervisor of elections is listed, Charlie.
My role as the supervisor of elections is to gather the ballots for the various categories we will be voting on tonight and tally the votes. At the end of the evening, awards will be given to the person receiving the most votes in each category. And I have to say, I am not cheap, but I can be bought.
Which leads into the next announcement that since Gloria has not made it, Charlie offered to be the second evaluator. So Tim, if you happen to miss out on that vote, you'll know who to blame. The Greek myths have become a big part of our own culture because many of those that you've heard, everyone will know almost universally. The story of Hercules, or the name in and of itself will be known. The Odyssey, that, as I mentioned before, was the story of Odysseus, or also known as Ulysses, and his attempt to get home from the Trojan War, which is what the Iliad told about, and his 20-year wanderings that it took for him to get home because of how he upset Poseidon. Ulysses is also known as the one who killed Achilles by shooting the poisoned arrow into his heel, the only place that he was vulnerable, which is why we now have the Achilles tendon, which is why we call it that, the place where he was most vulnerable. And by the way, if you do break or have your Achilles tendon cut, you cannot walk. It's not possible to use it with your foot. For my own use, the god Hypnos, god of sleep, the Greek god, is where the word hypnosis ended up coming from. The Trojan horse being the central figure of the Trojan War, which almost certainly, of course, did not happen, but is made for a great story. Troy was actually sacked many times over the years, and they did find the location of it a couple decades back, if I recall. They were working on excavating that. The story of Medusa. Everyone know who Medusa is? You've seen depictions of her, did you not?
Snakes?
The what? The snakes in the hair.
Yeah.
But do you recall that she was also that way because of how beautiful she was? And it was because of her vanity that she was cursed in such a way that nobody could look at her.
And I thought it was bad karma.
Who knows what a minotaur is?
Oh, yeah.
Heard that one? The bull-headed, big, giant almost like, that was found in the center of the labyrinth. And he was there to catch and eat anyone who came through there, which is where the prisoners were sent. The story of King Midas with the golden touch. These are all from the Greek myths. And they have passed down through the centuries to us now. And those stories ring true for us in so many ways that we are able to explain that, since I know you know it, and that you know it, I'm able to make references to it. That we share that culture and that history and understand those stories. It's easy for me to explain. If you try to describe someone as Medusa, you get a particular understanding of what that may mean. Or if you compare a woman to Aphrodite, or a man to Adonis. All of these come from the Greek myths. So you'll realize that those myths play a central role in our own understanding. Now you'll have to think about why they become so central to our culture and the way we think. But before we get to those explanations, we have more interesting things to listen to. The speakers and our prepared speeches. Our first speaker, both speakers, by the way, if you didn't catch it, are distinguished Toastmasters, and our first one this evening is repeating her competent communication manual, because one of those myths in Toastmasters is this idea that you finish. You never finish, you start over and you do it all again. Go for another DTM or yet another. Working her way through the competent communication manual for the second time. Tooth Fairy, Easter Bunny, and Santa Claus. These are the myths our first speaker knows well. Being the parent of 5 children, she has told these myths over and over. However, tonight she won't be telling myths, but will be telling her own true story. Here to inspire your audience with her speech called Like Me, please welcome distinguished Toastmaster Susan Morgan.
Imagine a little girl, 5 years old, on the kindergarten playground. All alone and too afraid to talk to anyone. What if no one liked her? She didn't feel like the other kids. What if they found out she wasn't like everyone else? Would they not like her? Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and our honored guest, I was that little girl. I was afraid to speak up in school or raise my hand or even answer a question. What if the answer was wrong? What if the other kids or the teachers thought I was stupid or weird
was stupid and weird, and I did not want to be found out. I just wanted to be like everyone else. I tried so hard to be like my big sister Karen. She was a tomboy. She was very good at sports. Or like my mom, who was also very fond of all kinds of sports. Me, I was a klutz. What I loved was to play with my dolls. But shh, don't tell anyone. I might not be like my family. And I don't want anyone to think I'm not like my family. My sister played softball. I tried to play softball, but I was too afraid of the ball. Karen also played basketball. I tried to play basketball, but those darn people kept getting in my way. I couldn't make baskets. I did have other abilities. I loved to sing, and I was good at it. I was in the school choir. I even did a couple solos. But that was not like the other kids at my school. They liked sports. Karen was a cheerleader. I tried out, but the coaches said they didn't want cheerleading to take me away from my choir commitments. But a couple of the other girls were doing both. They must not like me. Being different meant being shunned. Some kids did not hide their differences as well as me. I made friends with them. I stood up for them when others teased them. Kids would ask me, why are you friends with those weirdos? I'd say, they're nice, and I like everyone. In religious school, you're supposed to like everyone. So I wasn't different. I was just doing what was expected, right? Okay, seriously, I like the misfits because they accepted me the way I was, and they liked me. And they didn't tell anyone that I wasn't like everyone else. Let me tell you about Mark. He was a couple of years behind me in school. He was the nicest kid with the biggest heart. He was generous and supportive and would give the shirt off his back if someone was in need. But Mark was different. He was no good at sports, and he didn't even pretend to like them. He loved to sing and he loved to act. And he really loved Madonna. Now remember, we're talking about religious school. Madonna was taboo. So we all liked her, of course, but no one talked about it, except for Mark. He had all her albums, pictures of her all over his books, and was the original fashion Madonna poster boy. Because of this, the kids labeled him as sissy. They even started calling him gay. Then came the accusations that he was homosexual. Several times a week, the students' cruelty would drive Mark to the school office. He cried so hard it broke my heart. I told the other kids that they were not being Christ-like, that they should judge not lest ye be judged. I even tried the whole guilty until proven innocent. The issue to me was not his sexuality. He was a nice person, period. He was being tortured for not being like everyone else. Did you know I met another boy? His name was John, and he was different. He was from a different school in a different town. He was into music and played in all the bands at school, and he even played in a rock band. So different, but so cool. He hated sports, and he showed me many different people who also hated sports. Maybe it was okay to be a little different, especially if others are different like you. John and I dated through high school and later married. He knew I was different. that all I really wanted in life was to be a housewife and a mommy. For an adult woman in America, it's just not acceptable anymore. A woman needs to go out and work, to have a career, to be somebody. John and his family wanted me to be an independent woman, wanted me to be someone. If you didn't want to be someone, if you didn't climb the corporate ladder, you were very different. I want to be like everyone else, and I want everyone else to like me. So I tried to be what they wanted me to be, what society wanted me to be. I couldn't. I failed miserably. How can I be something I'm not? Then I got pregnant with triplets. There was no way anyone would expect me to go to work and put 3 special needs babies in daycare. Yay! I could be a housewife and justify it to everyone. I will not seem different anymore. 2 years later, another baby had me justifying just again. But I was still just justifying. I still was trying to be like everyone else and trying to make sure everyone liked me. I was not a career woman putting my career on hold. I do not have that ambition. Before the children came along, I was fighting depression. By the time the kids were in school, I took 2 antidepressants and a mood enhancer to get up in the morning. And I needed a sleeping pill each night. My self-esteem was starting its own pharmacy. I had few friends, and those I had, well, let's just say John liked them a little too much. I hated myself, I hated my life, and I wished I could die. Thankfully, I found a babysitter. She was 13 years old, very responsible, and extremely overweight. Suddenly, she started losing weight, and I asked her how she did it, and she told me hypnosis. I was fascinated. Could it help me? I researched hypnosis, and the more I learned, the more I wanted to learn. Perhaps I could be a hypnotist myself. John said it was all hogwash, but if it got me a career, he'd support me. I went to hypnosis training where I learned about the annual convention of the National Guild of Hypnotists. Thinking back, at age 38, I had never been away from home alone, knowing no one. Yet here I was, very new to hypnosis, clinging to my last hope to be like everyone. I faked it so well all these years, I could fake it for a weekend, right? No one would ever know. But how surprised I was to discover that I didn't have to fake it. These people were like me, and they did like me. I made friends on the first day. By the second day, I met Stephen. On the third day, I met myself. I learned more and discovered myself. Who I am, what I am, is wonderful. Someone different. Someone another can treasure above all else. My life changed in that one weekend. I no longer needed to be like everyone else. I discovered that my marriage was debilitating to me, so I ended it. I made more friends, people who like me because I am who I am. My friendship with Stephen evolved into a deep and passionate love, as we all know. Through my relationship with him, my awareness and acceptance of myself and my purpose in life has grown and blossomed. When I moved here to be married to him, he introduced me to a whole new life, a different way of thinking, and different people in different places. I can learn and grow and flourish. Through Stephen, I have met other people just like me, people who are not career-oriented, people who are not success-driven, people who are happy to leave the major decisions to others, and especially people who love and respect people like me who would rather follow than lead. Toastmasters has been an incredible opportunity for me to be even more like me. Here I have learned to communicate. With each speech I give, with each role I take, with each position I fill, my skills, my confidence, and my self-esteem flourish. I am different. I embrace my differences, celebrate my uniqueness. Once I found myself, accepted who I am, my life opened up. I am no longer afraid of life, and now I like me. Mr. Toastmaster.
Madam Timer, give us one more minute and everyone can write their feedback for Susan on the informal evaluation form.
I got one phone. That's right. Wow.
With the recent success of the Marvel superhero movie franchise, we've become much more acquainted with Norse mythology through Thor and the various gods and stories from there. Odin, and Freya, Heimdall, and especially Loki. Loki's began his own fan club these days, as it seems. And yet some of those stories you've also heard were other mythical aspects of Norse mythology. You've heard of Asgard, you've heard of the Valkyries, you've heard of Ragnarok, the end of the world. That's going to be the next Thor movie. It's called Ragnarok. Yggdrasil, probably not the name you're familiar with, but it is the tree of life, where all life comes from in Norse mythology that we have seen. Many of these stories came from an epic poem and an epic story within the Norse culture. The prose Edda and the poetic Edda, is what they're called. Of course, given the time and the distance through the years, very little of their actual writings have survived, only a few fragments. But we know many of the stories nonetheless. We also know quite a bit about Egyptian mythology, thanks in great part to the hieroglyphics we found in the tombs. We know about the gods they knew as Ra or Osiris or Horus, Set with his jackal head or Anubis, and Isis, the goddess there, not the term we hear used these days.
Yes.
God, that's awesome.
Daish would be a better way to call it.
That makes it up.
One of the stories that is in Egyptian mythology has to do with Ra and the fact that his eye actually could separate and go off on its own and do its own thing. In fact, he didn't actually control it. It had its own personality. This was a story that they had come up with because every time the eye returned, it was a significance in terms of rebirth. It actually turns out that the eye was the star we know as Sirius, the dog star. It's the brightest star in the sky. And when that star is first visible during the year in Egypt, is just before the Nile floods. That is why the story became what it was. And many of their stories ended up being written in different ways. The Book of the Dead, which if you've seen the movie The Mummy or The Mummy Returns, it has nothing to do with what they showed in the movie. But it was a cute way for them to pull in the mythology of the Egyptians into the movie. Our next speaker is actually also doing a retelling, much as our first speaker did, much as all of these mythological stories get told over the years. This is one he likes to tell, as he says, once every year. Therefore, it's a story that's near and dear to him. Please welcome our distinguished Toastmaster John Roberts as he tells us about legalized theft.
Thank you very much, Mr. Toastmaster. Well, this is what I'm going to say. It's not a story, but it's based upon my experience in the past working for the Internal Revenue Service and the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare. It seems there are these certain types of people of certain classes who get a check every month from the United States government. It used to be AFDC, but now it's called Temporary Assistance to Needy Families. And it incorporates food stamps, housing, Medicaid, and welfare. So this is what some of these people do. They get a check every month between $800 and $1,000. That's a lot of money. And what they do is they will go into a business, which is usually a person who's self-employed, and they'll purchase a 25-cent item or a dollar item. Or in my case, this lady went into this bar and bought 2 bottles of beer. She says, gosh, I don't have any cash, but I have my welfare check from the United States government. And the guy, being naive as heck, says, well, that's good money. I mean, after all, you can't get any better than a welfare check from the United States government. And then there's another check that most people get every year. That's called the IRS refund check. It's the excess of what we owe and what we paid in. And so in the Midwest, you go into a big grocery store like Winn-Dixie, and they have an enormous sign. We do not cash IRS refund checks. I used to wonder, why they do that? Well, I found out why. If you ever look at one of those checks, they have an 800 number. If this check is lost or stolen, call this 800 number, it will be replaced. That fast.
Oh my goodness.
So this woman went into this bar and bought some beer, gave her check. She received over $700 in change, and she walked out the door, right across the street to a payphone. I called the 800 number. It says, I lost my check. Same thing happens to the IRS refund checks. And so this poor, unsuspecting bartender, the owner of this bar, said, gosh, I've got everything made. So I'll just take all my checks down to the bank and have them give me the cash. But much to his surprise, the teller says, I'm sorry, sir, the check is no good. It was reported lost. So not only is he out all that cash, he's out everything. The same thing happens to the IRS refund checks. They go across, find a telephone, it doesn't cost anything, the dial 800 number, my refund check has been lost. What are you going to do? So this happens every year between January and May. So if you're self-employed, and someone walks in and wants to pay a bill with a refund check or a welfare check, say, you know what? Why don't you and I go down to the bank? I use my car, you get the cash, you pay me, and we'll be all straight. Most of them don't want to do that for obvious reasons. And so that's how life goes. And every year there's a new generation of people being ripped off. I'm not angry. I know there are people in life who haven't done as well as I've done, or as you. That's how life is. You pay your dues and you get your rewards. Maybe. I have nothing against people who get welfare checks. I have nothing against people who get refund checks. I just have an issue with people who take our monies and take my money because they need cash. No, thank you. So, this is not a story, this is an actuality based upon facts, which I've realized by being employed by the welfare agency of our great United States government. Because we have a myth that all government checks are good. Well, they are, until they've been reported stolen or lost. And all IRS refund checks are good unless they've been reported stolen. So, there's a caveat for us. The caveat is when someone comes in with a check from the United States government and says, I'd like to use this to pay my bill, you say, no, no. I'll take you in my car to the bank, you can cash it, and then you can pay me what you owe me. This actually happens these days. Particularly when the refund checks go out between January and April 15th. Mr. Toastmaster.
And time for one more minute. Everyone take this opportunity to write their feedback on his speech. American culture has its own sets of myths and mythological figures. You can begin with the Pilgrims and the first Thanksgiving. No matter how you hear that story, you know that's not the way it really happened. You could hear often about the story of George Washington and the cherry tree. We've heard that one. Yes. Yeah, that's not true either. Patrick Henry's speech ending with "Give me liberty or give me death." Very good chance that one is not true as it has been told. Or that Betsy Ross sewed the first American flag.
You're breaking my heart here.
They are popular stories and they make for a good part of the culture Patrick Henry's fiery storm that lit up the Virginia legislature to vote for secession. It's great to think that somebody that powerful a speech could be that passionate and convince everyone just based on the passion alone, but that may not have been the case. The chance that any one person would have sewn the first flag, given the technology at the time, would have actually been beyond reasonable, given the size of the flags and materials available. It may have been she helped direct it, but the evidence seems to indicate no, she wasn't actually making it. Then there are the ones that are completely made up, such as John Henry or Paul Bunyan, the Lone Ranger and Pecos Bill. They're part of our culture, but they're not real people. If they are related to any real people, they're only barely so. Some people have been blown up way beyond their proportions, such as Johnny Appleseed or Davy Crockett. They were real people. Some of what you hear about them was true, but a lot of it has been blown up out of proportion. But it fits our understanding of what we like to think of as the American character. Then things can go off into crazy realms. Bigfoot. Or you've heard maybe about the Jersey Devil if you're from up in that area. In other parts, you'll hear about Mothman. Where do we come up with these ideas, you wonder? And then, of course, the Headless Horseman was given to us in one fascinating tale that is passed down through the decades and still is a powerful story. Which is probably why our table topics master has his own bent on music mythology. Oh, that's right. We begin first with our timing report here with our speakers.
Susan's required time was 9 to 11 minutes. The actual time was 11:53, so a bit long and does not qualify. And John Roberts was 5 to 7, and his actual time was 6:34, so qualifies. Sometimes equal.
Thank you. No need to vote, since there's only one qualifying. Charlie, you can pick up comments later if you wish. After table topics. When our table topics master tonight was a highly impressionable youth, his dad took him to see a movie about Bigfoot, the Abominable Snowman, and the Loch Ness Monster. He can't remember the title of the movie, but it left a lasting impression on him. Does he believe in Bigfoot? Yes. Does he believe in ancient aliens? Yes. Does he believe Washington is broken? Yes. Well, actually, the last one isn't a myth at all. But please welcome our table topics master for tonight, Mark El Chupacabra.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. Ginny, I remember that you said that you were the Toastmasters a few years ago, so hopefully you kind of remember how table topics goes. You are the only person in this room tonight that has a choice on whether you want to participate or not. So would you be willing to participate if I call on you?
Yes.
Great. Everyone else is fair game. I used to play a couple different online shooting games with some coworker friends of mine. We decided to create screen names based on mythical characters, some of which Stephen talked about earlier. One of my friends chose the name Manticore, and my choice was Chupacabra as part of my introduction. I always thought that was a really cool sounding name. I had another online name called Death Waffle, but we'll talk about that later. Some other common myths, some are recent, but cell phones cause cancer, bats are blind, the IRS targets conservatives.
They do cause cancer, by the way.
Some of these have been debunked.
IRS targets everything.
Exactly. The dinosaurs and humans coexisted. Undercover policemen actually do not have to tell you that they are a cop if you ask them. And you don't have to wait 24 hours to file a missing person police report with the police. So the questions tonight are loosely based on myths, and we'll get started. Full moons are often associated with odd or insane behavior. Hence the words lunatic or lunacy, derived from the word lunar. Now, armed with this knowledge, Tim, what are the different ways to kill a werewolf?
Different ways. Well, I actually know two. One is the silver bullet in the heart, right? The other is hey, you gotta nail it in there. But I'd rather talk about the Luna Restaurant in Winter Park. That's great. Gail and I were there for a Toastmaster Club once, remember?
We were.
And sitting there with those kids with their great NBA business plans was really fascinating because they had some great ideas. I was hopeful for the United States because of what these kids were going through. But yeah, the werewolf movies, now I remember them when I was young, they were still black and white. It was Bela Lugosi, I want to buy a Junac. And then there's a Wolfman, which is Lon Chaney Jr. These were the characters that played, but the ones that built the best suspense, believe it or not, was actually the ones where Abbott and Costello met these guys. Because your little friendly little Abbott, this little chubby guy, was going to get hurt by these creatures. And that put more free than the regular movies were. So it was really good. Did anybody see the movie Johnny Depp, where he had Bela Lugosi as one of his actors trying to make a movie? And it was hysterical. It was one of Johnny Depp's first movies. By the way, he's doing one right now on the Donald. And the new book, which is really, I can't wait to see that one. But so far as the werewolves and Frankenstein, still one of my favorite movies. The basis is silver bullet and a peg through the heart, wooden stake through the heart. Mr. Tabletop Smash.
According to Chinese mythology, there used to be 10 suns up in the sky, and they would travel around with their mother individually. Once they decided to all appear at the same time, and the heat was so intense that their father, Dijin, ordered them never to do that again, but they didn't listen to him. So the father summoned a great archer named Yi to shoot the suns away. And Yi shot 9 of the suns, leaving our only remaining sun, which is in the sky today. Robin Hood was also a great archer, but he stole from the rich and gave to the poor. Was he a good person or basically just a thief? Sarah.
Robin Hood, a thief? Suppose so. If you take anything from anyone, I'd like to think of his intentions, and they were good. So that's a yes to that question, Robin Hood. That is one of the movies I did enjoy and has some good historical reference to where I'm from. I think about myths, and I'll use a different word because I immediately think of my Irish grandmother. Her name was Nora O'Rourke, very deep, thick Irish accent. And she was superstitious. So I'd like to think myth, belief, had some very, very strong beliefs. I'd go visit her on holiday, and she was adamant. In her own home, she would raise her voice and get very excited and fearful when she would have moments. For example, one of the superstitions Nora had was she did not want to pass you on a stairwell. And we would go up the stairs and she would say, "You bloody get down now! Something bad will happen!" And she'll have this outrage that would terrify you. Everyone cleared the stairs. Same thing with the umbrella. Get that bloody wrong in my house. Went crazy over these superstitions. Black cats. I found them fascinating and learned more from my grandmother than I probably did from Robin Hood. Mr. Tabletop Master.
In Greek mythology, Medusa was a female who had a hideous face with living snakes in place of her hair. Anybody who looked upon her eyes would instantly turn to stone. Ginny, tell me about something in life that you think is ugly.
Mr. Tabletop Master and fellow Toastmasters, the story of Methuselah is indeed a good myth for our society right now. We live in a time where people are so obsessed with their appearance, and vanity is really at a very high level of concern. So to address the concern of what is ugly is really a subjective one. is held by the beholder, or in the eye of the beholder, more aptly. And we each have our own determination of what is beautiful and what is not. So frankly, I think ugly is a very difficult word to define, a very subjective one, and would rather say in response that there is no such word as ugly, but all is beautiful. Mr. Tabletop staff.
There have been many great battles in history. David and Goliath, the Spartans versus the Romans, Hillary and Bernie. Gail, who would win the battle between vampires and zombies? And why?
Vampires and zombies. I unfortunately am not the Toastmaster tonight to be speaking about these mythological, crazy, ugly creatures. I do not care to look at any movie, television, every time another vampire type movie appears. I look at whoever I'm with and I say, what a waste of time, of resources, of energy. I just don't get into them in the least. Why is that? It probably started with a myth that I developed on my own as a kid. In Florida, my dad is stationed in Japan, we are here in Florida, and with 5 of us kids, my mother had to entertain us somehow, some way, and Friday was always Friday horror movies. I don't know if you all remember. Friday night was the horror movie night. We would sit around the television, and what would come on but walking, man-eating creatures. I had nightmares all my life. I do not want to regurgitate those memories, and don't even go down that path, ever. If you ever want company for a movie, don't call me. I will call you. Mr. Tabletop.
So I'll put you down for zombie then.
Yeah.
Madam Timer, can we get a timer's report for our table topic speakers this evening?
Tim talked about how to kill a werewolf for 1 minute 27 seconds and qualifies. I spoke about Robin Hood and my grandmother Nora for 1 minute 48 seconds and qualified. Ginny spoke about something ugly for 53 seconds, does not qualify. Gail, vampires and zombies for 2 minutes and 4 seconds and qualifies.
Thank you. Please vote for best table topic speaker. And at this time, I would like to call our Toastmaster back to the lectern, Stephen Moore.
Thank you, Mark. Why is it that these myths appear in every culture in some fashion or form? Aside from the points that have already been described, trying to explain things that they didn't have the understanding for otherwise. These myths become characters. These characters become identities we will relate to or at least understand. They become stories with their opening, their beginning, their conflict, some sort of a resolution to the end. And these are stories that are shared amongst that cultural group. And they would tell the stories over and over, the same ones. They would change over time. And as the kids would grow up to adults, they would be identifying perhaps with one character or another, finding some way to fit within their society and to perpetuate that society onto future generations. This is why myths persist. And some of those myths won't be true. Some of them may actually be destructive. But even if you look around our culture and our society today, you will find some of those myths, some that everybody will understand, subscribe to, and some which only certain subgroups follow, subscribe to. As you see, sometimes it's a cultural split, sometimes it's a society fragmenting, or just people who happen to find each other that were the same and came together because they already had the same beliefs coming together. Our own storytelling will be resuming in 1 week with the International Speech Contest, as you'll be hearing some stories I'm sure you've already heard before being told yet once again. Stories that will have characters, they will have conflicts and resolutions. The same appeal that fits our own brains. That's why we always come back to them. It's what becomes us. I think I've run out of time. Therefore, I better get our general evaluator up here. Jay Majors is tonight's dispeller of myths and fairy tales. She will relate and clarify the mythical events of the evening and uncover the scary and amazing tales of the evening. Please welcome Jay Majors.
Good evening, fellow Toastmasters and our wonderful guest. It is my pleasure to be here tonight with all of you fabulous Toastmaster people. My job tonight is to introduce the evaluators of the speeches, and after they have gone and we've heard their evaluations, it is my job to dispel the myths, to clarify the issues that may have went on tonight, and evaluate the meeting. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our first evaluator of the evening. This evening, Tim is preparing his sensory spelling workshop. Selling workshop. I can't read your writing. So help! Help me read this writing. That will take place this April. Tim will be attending the Bill Gov Speakers Workshop next month with the intent to become a keynote speaker. Please welcome author and coach, Tim Rickey.
Help, I need somebody. Help is on its way. From the song the Beatles had many years ago. And Susan, help write. Interesting speech. I had not heard this before, so I was able to hear it firsthand. And the things I like to point out, some really good things that I really liked about this. First, you open right away with, you got our attention. Instead of saying good evening, you got our attention first, which to me is always important. And we're locked in, and then you proceeded with the speech. I like the little bits of humor. Started your own pharmacy. I thought that was kind of cute. Then you did your characters. You switched voices here and there, and we could tell there was a change in that. And that's always good in the speech because we can separate you from the speech a little bit by doing that. Guilty until proven innocent. Did you have that backwards?
Probably.
Because it's supposed to be innocent until proven guilty.
Yeah,
But
I probably said it
it
backwards.
depends on the country, you know. In this country.
I'm dyslexic, so that probably happened.
Depends on a bit more than that these days.
And you had a good finish. You wound it up when you finished, so we knew that you were getting to an end. You made the statements that showed us that you were finishing it. So you had an opening in the body and close. Was this an icebreaker one time for you? Because it could have been, because it really fit in there. Now, suggestions. Susan, you know this story. You lived it. I want you out here. I want you to do this again. But I want you out here. Now, the thing is, you think, I'm not going to remember this stuff. But the reality is, you will. Matter of fact, you'll remember it better than if you're back to doing notes. That's what really happens. Because when you're doing notes, you lose the eye contact, you lose the vocal variety, you lose all the things you really want to express in a speech. But if you do it with being out front, those are open to you, and it'll flow, I promise you that. The first time I got up, somebody said, "You're speaking today." I am? There's 50 people in the room. Well, I've been a Toastmaster for 3 years. You know what? It was the best speech I'd ever delivered in my life until that point in time. So it surprised me, so surprise yourself. Go out and do this game, because I like to hear it that way, because then you can have the eye contact, you'll have the pauses and the passion, all of the things that actually existed in that event, but they don't show as much here as they would if you did it out front. So, remember that you are unique, just like everyone else. Mr. Tabletop. Madam.
General Evaluator.
Your evaluator. Read this.
Okay, our next evaluator, evaluator number 2, Charlie has finally kicked the bronchitis bug.
Yay!
Try not to cough. Thankfully, we're so happy he's back for the entire evaluation. He is glad to be able to participate again at Toastmasters. We did miss you. Please help welcome bronchitis-free Charlie Brombelier, evaluating John Roberts.
Madam General Evaluator, fellow Toastmasters, and welcome guests, especially our own John Roberts. Legalized theft. Just the mention of IRS perks everyone's ears. You're speaking out of the Competent Communications number 9, Persuade with Power. And it asks you to persuade listeners to adopt your viewpoints or ideas or take some action. Yes, it was definitely appealing to the audience interest, because the mere mention, as I said before, perks up everyone's ears and gets everyone's attention right away, because we love the IRS so much. The second objective was appealing to the audience interest. Your explanation of the bar incident experience was for sure emotional to hear, and that actually perked up everyone's emotions and interest. It said to avoid notes. Well, you did an excellent job in avoiding notes, because obviously you've done this before and you know it by heart. John, everyone has interest, as I said, when the IRS is mentioned. Your ability to get up in front of the lectern and start to speak was only marked by one little thing. You started your speech with acknowledging the audience. That's usually done a little better if you do it in course after a few paragraphs in sentences, because you want to hit them with something to perk their ears up right away. You did afterwards, but it's better to hit them right off the top. The other thing I want to point out, perhaps for improvement to you, is you need to update the IRS content, because I don't think that's any more available to do that as a bar incident anymore. They have changed some rules and things that you can't just go and cash a check at a bar. But it did happen before, and that was an excellent point you brought up. I love the eye contact, because you did go through everyone in the room. I love that you had the courage to come right up in the front, right from the beginning, and speak. and I liked your mannerisms. You expressed yourself when you had to. You have a clear voice, a very smooth, clear voice, which everyone was able to hear you clearly. Quite frankly, this was a good educational speech, and I can't wait to hear your next one, and I hope it's soon. Madam General Evaluator.
Two great evaluations. Now we need to have, give the timer a minute to do the timing and everybody to do their voting, please.
Timers report.
Tim's evaluation was 2 minutes and 44 seconds, so qualifies. Charlie's was 3 minutes and 37 minutes, so just not. Just 2 extra words there, Charlie.
That's what brought
Good job,
guys.
Tim.
Darn it, IRS words.
Thank you.
Most improved.
Okay, it is time for me to give a few words about our meeting and some of the things that I noticed tonight that were dispelling some myths and fairy tales. So first of all, the myth that we never start on time. Tonight, we started on time. Believe it or not, we started this meeting on time. We weren't waiting for everyone else to come in, which is amazing, and a respecter of time. I thought that our Toastmaster tonight had a great topic. I wasn't expecting all of the Greek, Egyptian, Roman, all of the mythology and carrying it forward to today, and it made me think. And I hope it made the rest of you think. It was interesting how it can apply to where we are today, which our wonderful guest brought into focus on her table topics. I like when our evaluators pointed out to us to get out in front, to speak out in front. Tim, you said this, and I'm a guilty party on this same thing. I'll read when I really should be out here just telling it. And you made that comment for Susan, and I think we're all there. There's so much in our lives and in our hearts that we can really come out and speak it without so many no's. So I'm trying to learn that lesson, and I think we all need to. Your point, Charlie, also with hit them, and Tim, you also made the point, to get them up front first, hold off for a few sentences before you make your acknowledgments. I need to learn that as well, and I think that's a good lesson for all of us to learn. I really think this was a great educational meeting if we take these points into context and in perspective for each and every one of us. So I thank you.
Functionary reports.
Functionary, yes.
And most improved.
Vote for most improved. Can we vote for most improved while we're?
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
We'll vote. Thanks.
All right, let's go to functionary reports, and our first functionary report would be the timers report.
We did it already.
Timers.
I need some more.
Please.
I need some more most improved because I have a tie.
Please vote. Vote for most improved. Everybody vote. Everybody vote.
Remember,
You break the tie,
You're the
Charlie.
tiebreaker.
You're the
Gail, are you
tiebreaker.
ready for your
Here's the tiebreaker.
honors? Okay.
Unless you're the one who wants time.
You can pick himself.
Okay. You ready for my report?
Yeah.
All right. Help! I did not tally up all of the double clutches, the tongue clicks, the likes, now, so's, thumbs, and the nose. However, individually, Tony, a big goose egg.
I didn't say much yet. Yay!
And you're sitting at a table where I did detect 16 from Mr. Ricky. The double clutches almost trumped the likes, the so's, and the nows.
Did you ever use the word Trump?
Eliminate that word from your vocabulary.
You're gonna, if I got the tabletop about ugly, Trump was my top. Sarah, I detected 2, one of those being a tongue click. Stephen Morgan, 5, double clutch, 3 double clutches, 2 ahs, 2 likes and so's. Susan Morgan, 10, 3 double clicks, 3 tongue clicks, 4 double clicks, and 3 like so's or ums. John Robert, I detected the overuse of so from you. 6 uses of so leading into a sentence. Unless you're going to so, get rid of that. And something I'm not sure you are aware, and I'm not sure anybody else was aware. You have not a gurgling sound, but you have a glottal sound. When you breathe, okay? You might want to just zoom in on your breathing when you speak to try to avoid, okay? Mark Lockery detected 3. Charlie Bombalier, 3. Our guest, 2. Awesome. And myself, I did 2. But there was one observation I was going to mention, that tonight I had hoped to report that we had no ahs and ums and you knows in the column. But up until our general evaluator and our evaluators, we entered the column. Tim, I detected 1 you know, and J, a ah. The only ah I detected. Yes, yes. So good job, Toastmasters.
Okay. Our next functionary are from Mary and Tony.
First and foremost, I need to mention that Friday night was also wrestling night.
Football night.
No, it was wrestling night.
That's high school football.
And I can only suspect that the Democrats would say Robin Hood was a good person and the Republicans would say a thief.
You're probably right.
Word of the day, Gail, Tim, and Jay. Sorry you didn't have more fun with that. Help! Help!
Too late.
As far as
Wasn't interesting.
colorful imagery, I must have fallen asleep because I didn't hear any. The closest thing was my self-esteem was starting its own pharmacy. Very clever. And I really like, Susan, the way you said you met Stephen on the 2nd day and on the 3rd day you met yourself. That was really beautiful. What a great message too. I wanted to be like everyone else and I wanted everyone to like me, and the repetition of that, I think the audience, I could relate to that. I'm sure a lot of other people could. I wouldn't call it exceptional use of the vocabulary. I did notice several of you are addicted to the word so. And I've never heard anyone in here, could be my memory, make a suggestion as to what to do instead of use the word so. Perhaps Stephen has.
You don't say anything at all.
either don't say anything at all, but there's connective words like therefore, or what that means.
But that's
Just such and
overused
such.
too. Therefore, I sometimes pick up on.
I've never heard therefore overused.
There's another way
Unless,
too. Tony, there's another way too.
thank you. What
If
would that be?
if you're doing a speech,
There's so many words you could
if you
use to
write it
connect.
out, if you write it out, you can eliminate the souls because you've written it, or you're not going to do that when you write it out.
And I noticed Gail buzzed Susan when she said so, but she said it, she emphasized it like so. I think
Yeah.
when it's done like that, it's an important part of the speech if she takes that much time to emphasize it. One thing, Susan, I did catch, did ya? I don't know if you want to use that word. Did you know I met another boy? It could be you.
Yeah.
I'm fine. Could be you. Wanted to point it out.
No, that's one. It should have been better.
I'm good. Thank you. I think in this room, and I'm not sure what, but maybe you could help me.
Good job.
Little kerfuffle.
Kerfuffle. Thank you. And I think that is my time. Let me bring back our Toastmaster. President.
Oh, President.
Or you can just call me Death Waffle, that's fine. We had a great meeting tonight. Have awards here in a minute, but first I just want to restate next week is our competition. And I have so far competing in the international speech portion, Stephen, Jonathan Dunn, and Tony Gillis. For table topics, our competitors are Stephen, Jonathan Dunn, Jay Majors, and Tony Gillis. It's not too late if anybody else wants to join as a contestant. With our functionary positions filled, there's opening as contestants now. Susan, as the chair for the contest, what else do we need to do? We need to do program.
We need trophies, we need food. Some food to help. I mean, I don't think we need really any decorations or anything like that.
I think we can keep our food relatively simple too. Just
Yeah,
snacks
it's
and-
just simple, just some snacks, if everyone wants to bring in some chips and dip or something like that.
I'm going to go ahead and do the program, so you can put me down.
Okay. And I can do trophies, and I also would be happy to put together all the judges' folders and the functionary folders.
Does that include certificates of participation?
Have not done that, but if
Okay.
we can.
Well, touch base with me
We'll
after
touch
the meeting.
base, yeah.
I can help with the eating of the food as well.
Okay, and I can help eating the food too, and drinking the wine.
Does anybody have any other announcements before we do the awards? Yes, Tim?
2001, I was fortunate enough to evaluate a new speaker in 1066 in Concord. And his name is Mike Dooley. Does anybody know who Mike Dooley is?
Oh, yeah, we do.
Mike Dooley is now a part of the Hay House
Oh.
printing exam. He emailed me today that he's become part of that organization. And we're talking Deepak Chopra and people like this. So if you think Toastmasters can lead you somewhere. And Mike was also the reason that I began to write, because he got up in the club one day and he said, this is how I began. And he told us the steps he took to recording tapes, converting into books, and that led them on the path of doing his workshops, which he's now doing worldwide. I think he's in Australia this week. So he's on his 5th world tour. And by the way, he has a wife and a new baby. So I was wondering about Mike, because he's traveling so much, how do you possibly put a family together, but he's done it. You know. Mike's a great guy, and we all know Andy. Remember we went to Andy's workshop on, it was cheap in those days, right? Now $1,500. But Andy is his brother, and Andy's very animated, while Mike is very kind of reserved, but has an excitement about what he speaks about. But just to know what Toastmasters can do for you is amazing. So it was great to get that news from Mike today.
You know what, maybe you should do something via a speech or something for us on an educational day that enlightens us all about how he did it and what you learned from that.
That's good. I'll email him, ask him if he's gonna give me some kind of outline. And I can
Yeah,
build on that.
because
Yeah.
it can help all of us and all of us in our businesses and what have you
Mhm.
to move forward a bit. I'd be interested.
Gail?
Yes, I'm not going to be here next week. Good luck to the participants and all. I did bring our newest members' manuals. I thought he was going to be here. Can someone make sure he gets
I'll
them?
be here next week,
Great.
I'm competing,
Thank you.
but I think he's having some traveling right now too.
I think he is gonna be here next week, though, he did say.
All right.
I do hope so.
Yeah, because we have him set as timer.
And I took care of everything for him on our end, so.
So he's on board at TMI. Wonderful.
Yeah, he's on board. He should be getting whatever he needs to be getting, but yes.
Updated. Okay, those are his manuals. And I want to extend a big kudos to Tim. Most of you know that I have been asking for help in the various contests. I'm sorry, my back is to so many. And Area 41, not our area. Tim today helped to conduct the speech contest for the Trailblazers that meet up near UCF. But what he did and what he was able to deliver, Tim, I just wanted to give you a hug, and I want to physically applaud you, and I hope everybody here will join me.
What did I do?
What Tim did, they're a very small club struggling in membership. The same old members come, they're dedicated, but they only had one contestant who was participating in the international speech. It was good content, but I challenged her, I was the chairman, and I challenged her and asked, would you entertain an open evaluation on the speech since you're going to be representing the area? She said, absolutely. Tim got up and gave such a professional evaluation based on years of being involved with Toastmasters, and that was worth $1 million, I know, for her. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Tim?
And finally, this Sunday is the district chili cook-off as well as the auction here in Altamont at the Eastmont Civic Center. What time we'll see you. If you want to bring auctioned items at 12, and then the auction itself starts at 1, and chili cook-off is going to be going through the day.
Now, did you
What time
still
do
need
you-
help with the chili? Have you
Yeah,
helped with the chili?
what time do you want us there for the chili?
Well,
I mean, I need to help you eat it, right?
everybody will be casting their
No,
vote.
you wanted assistant.
Yeah, I needed probably one person
At
there.
what time?
Yeah.
1
So
o'clock?
12, 12:30, 1-ish.
Okay. So 1:05?
I don't know what time we're opening.
I'll be there. I'm on by then. No
Yeah.
problem, I'm on.
Okay, very good.
Tony, you had it.
Well, yes, I wanted to mention one thing that I was going to say is for Marion. I wanted to compliment and thank John Roberts for his speech tonight. He has had some very serious health issues, and despite some repetition of information in his speech, it was awesome, John, to see you stand up before us again. And I know your rehabilitation has been incredibly difficult. So thank you for honoring us with that tonight. I truly am very grateful. I see him in the gym working out, we work out together. It's nice. Is there an officer meeting tonight?
That's an award.
Okay. It's the third Wednesday.
What was that?
It is the third Wednesday.
Okay.
Have one? Do we want to have one?
Well,
It can be quick.
Okay.
Doesn't have to be a long meeting.
Yeah, so it'd be
I
good
did
time.
bring the membership plaques, I made some guest packs and new member packs, and the only thing that's not in there was the applications for the guest packs.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and I'd like a couple copies.
You have my folder back?
What folder?
The thing in the background.
That box is over there.
Okay, good.
And Stephen, there's some PRs.
Here's a couple.
Excuse me, we're in the office meeting. It's great.
I know, we're almost done, right? Okay, let's get to the awards then. First award is for Best Speaker. And after all the counting, it goes to John Roberts. Best Table Topics Award, Sarah Hunt.
Thank you, Aunt Brandon.
Our Best Evaluator Award tonight, Tim Ricky. Our Most Improved Award tonight, this is Susan Morgan. And our Tim Chastain Award tonight, after accepting the last-minute role as an evaluator, fresh off of death's doorstep, and able to give us a 25-minute evaluation, nonetheless. Charlie Pombalero. With nothing else, meeting adjourned.
Yeah.